I am thou, thou art I. Thou hast acquired a new thou. It shall become the wings of rebellion that break the chains of captivity. With the birth of the Music Arcade Persona episode, I have obtained the wings of blessing that shall lead to freedom and new power.
If you haven't figured it out yet, we're talking about Persona 5 music today. Hello everyone, welcome to Music Arcade. I'm Galen, the sound guy Firestone.
And I'm Ranakel.
And it's a Persona Day, as we get dangerously close to the release of Persona 5 Strikers.
Indeed. No Eddie with us today, unfortunately at the mercy of the weather.
Yeah, he got thunder and or hailstormed. Which is...
never a good time.
Never fun. Yeah, that's unfortunate. So it's just going to be the two of us today. Eddie's not an RPG guy, so we figured we'd just go ahead and do this episode and make it easy on us. So yes. He doesn't have to sit through us talking about RPGs for an hour again.
And this should be an interesting episode because, as I realized and remarked even before we recorded, Persona 5 is a game that both Galen and I absolutely love, but a game we also disagree on almost every single aspect.
Probably. When putting this one up, we were talking about the music, and I made a comment, and he's like, ooh, we're going to argue about this one.
Yeah, no, like, even on other aspects, my favorite character is one you absolutely detest. And,
oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you liked him.
I like him a lot.
Oh, what the hell? Okay. I'm gonna stop talking about this, otherwise the whole episode's going to be this.
See? Yeah, the whole episode is very likely to be this, in some way or another, though probably less intensely.
Probably. Yeah, this is one of the rare occasions, like, when first... Oh boy, Face is calling it out already. Oh dear.
Yeah, no, I love Miso Kitagawa.
Why? Why? No, not asking that. Don't answer. I don't want to know. Oh boy, here we are. Wow, that just derailed my whole train of thought.
Music.
I was not expecting this.
About music.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that was one of the first things I mentioned by coming into the server, and quickly learned not to mention it again.
Oh boy. Yeah, he's kind of a hot button topic for me, I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
Okay. Taking a deep breath, relaxing, and trying to get back on topic before this becomes an argument about useless again.
See what I mean about disagreeing about something we both like?
Yeah. When we first started talking about both this and admittedly Gathering of Gotchas, the whole point was to get people with disparate opinions. And so far that hasn't actually been the case. We've more or less lined up on the vast majority of songs we've talked about and music we've talked about in general. My opinion of the Persona 5 soundtrack, hot take, is actually kind of a weak soundtrack. It isn't as good as P3 or P4 or the vast majority of other Shin Megami Tensei entries. It does beat the ever-loving snot out of Strange Journey, but that's not a very high bar.
Meanwhile, I'm on the opinion that the Persona 5 soundtrack is celebrated for a very good reason, and that it's strongly thematic, it manages to elevate the game, and is pretty catchy in many places.
It is. I don't want to say there's no good songs on it, because that's clearly not true. If it was a flat-out
if
bad
it was
soundtrack,
completely forgettable and boring and unremarkable, we wouldn't even be talking about it.
Yeah. Or worse yet, like something, again, like Strange Journey, aka what in the hell was Shoji Meguro thinking with that one, which is just a case of, boy, this music is just bad on every level, isn't it? That would give us something to talk about at least. There's more to talk about with a bad soundtrack than there is with a boring one, that's for sure.
True, and you can't talk about it condescendingly, which is a notable plus.
It is. In the case of Persona 5, I can't really do that. I just don't think it's as strong as other soundtracks in the series. That's the extent of my review of it. It's still perfectly fine and perfectly reasonable soundtrack.
Which is part of why, while we will focus on Persona 5 as the center point, we will talk about other games in the series as point of comparison.
Correct. Now, before we go on, we are probably going to be talking about some spoilers, because one of the few songs that I really like off of Persona 5 is actually like the second or last dungeon, or the third to last if you're playing Royal. So I highly recommend you, like, if you are spoiler averse, now is the time to probably hit the stop button, because we're probably not going to give a second spoiler warning for the Persona series.
Also, for the record, I haven't played Royale, but it's going to be a part of the discussion, at least one part of it.
Yeah, but all I'm going to say, really, here's a preview. The new final dungeon that takes place after the other final dungeons is kind of a boring song. End review. Like, that's about it. Anyways, may as well start from... Where are we starting from?
Where are we starting from?
Because you gave me a list, and this is very random order.
Yes. Well, let's start with the one you mentioned before, your favorite dungeon theme.
So this one comes when you're fighting the, I guess the story climax boss, but not the final boss. And you're in that dungeon. That song is a banger. It's called Arc. It takes place on the cruise ship. That one's a jam.
Incidentally, the boss in question, also the voice actor for Zhongli in Genshin Impact.
Yes, Keith Silverstein.
And he does such a killer job in it.
He's also the voice of Jugadan in, and Deng Ai in Dynasty Warriors, and we're going to be talking about that in our Rock episode, specifically their levels. So, you know, like, he's not an uncommon voice actor. He's quite prolific and quite good.
And quite talented, yes.
Yes. Big love for Keith Silverstein. He has nothing to do with the music here. So, gonna move on with life.
Nope.
This song is really good. It's got, like, that nice deep groove to it. It's got a melody I can appreciate. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't get annoying. One of the other songs that was posted to this list, and we'll talk about that fairly shortly, is actually one of my least favorites on the soundtrack. I just find it very, very repetitive and annoying.
Yeah, but Arc we can agree on. Arc is very good. After the more groovy and themes with lyrics and so on from the previous dungeons, I can certainly appreciate how much tension this one brings. Like, it builds up to a showdown.
It does. And that's something Shoji Meguro has always been very, very good at. A lot of his, like, final or second to final or near the end of the game dungeon musics have usually been fairly dang strong. There's two in particular that I find myself comparing this one to. There's Long Way from Persona 4, which is the music from Magasu Inaba, also the second to last dungeon, which makes a very easy comparison. Which is a similar kind of vibe. It's still got that, like, hard, like, it's still got that, like, tense edge to it. It's got, like, a hard angle to it. It's a little less pressure than Arc, but Long Way is still quite, very much a case of, okay, things are happening now, and we're getting to the end of the story.
Yes.
In the case of Arc, I think it fits a cruise ship very, very well in terms of that ship being enemy territory. Not the first time we've had a Shin Megami Tensei time on a cruise ship. We had one in Digital Devil Saga 1, but our point there was to lure enemies into a trap and then literally blow it up. So it turned into a very different feeling. That one has more to do with, like, the Super Metroid escape theme than it does a dungeon like this one.
You talk about the fact that it's enemy territory, which is true of every palace, except arguably, possibly, the pyramid. And even then,
that's just retaking Persona 4 at that point.
Yes. But this one, I feel, has even more of a sentiment, not only because of the pressure the music brings up, but because accompanying the music is also all of the voices you hear constantly while infiltrating that palace on the megaphones.
Those are not part of the album version, and those are not present 100% of the time. It's a very interesting texture that I like, but I'm not sure I can file it under the soundtrack category. That just feels like stage ambiance. I get how it blends together, and you're right, it does add to the tension by making it seem very, very, again, enemy territory. Like, you're in the heart of the beast at this point.
Like, the enemy is omnipresent in this situation.
Yes, that's a very good word for it. Thank you. So yeah, another one I find myself comparing this one to is the second to last dungeon, pattern of Digital Devil Saga 2 called One Way Stairs, aka The Airport. And One Way Stairs is kind of it's one of my favorite dungeon themes of all time. Again, very similar. Once again, Shoji Meguro, very good at this getting to the end of the story hard dungeon sound. Like, we keep coming back to the same thing. Hey, the second to last dungeons are usually really good. In the case of One Way Stairs, that's kind of the king of the crop as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to that particular sub-genre thing of music.
Which is funny because the Digital Devil Saga and the Shin Megami Tensei have a very different atmosphere from Persona soundtracks.
It does.
Most of the time. But there is this showdown part where they kind of converge, because they do have some themes that cross, even though they exploit them very differently with very different settings.
Yes, absolutely. And then, again, it's the same composer, Shoji Meguro. In both cases of Long Way and Arc, that is probably the closest to traditional Shin Megami Tensei music we've gotten in the Persona series as a whole. Generally speaking, it's got its own vibe, but there's room for going back to the basics of the parent series.
Yeah.
And it's shown off very well in the form of Arc, which is easily my favorite song on the whole soundtrack, which says a lot about my opinion of the Persona soundtracks as a whole, where the throwback to Shin Megami Tensei proper is my favorite song.
Yeah, I mean, that sends a message, doesn't it?
A little bit. I've never been down with the Persona series for the most part, as far as the music is concerned. I love the games, I do. I'm even, like, really a proponent of Persona 2, and I wish they'd release, like, an actual full HD duology of Persona 2. I would love to play through that in a new environment.
That's how I started the series.
With Eternal Punishment, or with the PSP version of Innocent Sin?
The one with Maya as the protagonist.
That's Eternal Punishment. That's the second half of...
Oh, right.
Yeah, Persona 2 was one of the few duologies in the series, along with Shin Megami Tensei 4 now, and with Digital Devil Saga. Those are the three duologies within the overall construct of the series, unless you count Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2, which some people do.
No matter how much Atlus is trained to pretend Persona 1, 2, and other 2 didn't exist.
God, I wish they did.
Yeah, because the series really took a hard shift with Persona 3, but...
It did, and that shift took off and made Atlus a ton of money and made them and actually brought people into the Shin Megami Tensei Persona infrastructure, to the point where Persona 5, between the two forms, sold like 5 million copies, which is insane to think about compared to other Shin Megami Tensei games. It's really ridiculous. So people really gravitated towards the series. I understand why Atlus is pushing it so hard.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like there isn't room for exploration. I mentioned Strikers coming out. Sure, I'll do a Persona Dynasty Warriors. Why would I ever say no to that? And then we may as well just take a hard left turn into this, because it's on the list. They did a Persona 4 fighting game. Persona 4 Arena.
Yeah. That they did. And not only did they do that, they also made a story that was a sequel, essentially.
Yeah.
They even made the mistake at some point to like their story too much. Because, like, one of the campaigns, there's campaigns character per character, one of them has you actually play the game exactly one time. The rest is visual novel. The campaign lasts 2 hours.
I hate. This is a problem.
1 hour and 55 of visual novel with one fight in between.
Okay, admittedly,
That was
this
a bit too much.
actually a big problem that the Persona series as a whole has. When it gets into cutscene mode, there's no stopping it. Let me play a video game is a very common refrain with me when I play these games.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping Strikers doesn't do that, because it's a Dynasty Warriors game. Let me fight things.
There's less of a chance, if only because it should be less busy, since Persona 4 Arena, in spite of its name being Persona 4 Arena, really plays up the Persona 3 to Persona 4 crossover.
It does. It does. Let's talk about P4 Arena's music. You have a song on here. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, just the version of Which Out to the Truth, which is the main combat theme for Persona 4. And here used as the theme for the Persona 4 protagonist, which in this situation uses his canon name, so Yu Narukami.
One of two canon names, because I think the manga had a separate one.
Yes, but this is canon to this game anyway.
Right.
And it's just dynamic. Instead of starting... the remix for the fighting game and in the main game are kind of similar when it gets going, but the start is very different. When in Persona 4, it just attacks right away with the lyrics, and then the music kicks in. Meanwhile, in Persona 4 Arena, it starts with the guitar, basically putting the main theme is in place during the character's introduction, and then it gets back on track. Kind of throwing you off a loop, but establishing the slightly faster pace, which only makes sense in fighting games.
Yeah, it does. And I'm going to be completely honest, when it comes to remixes, if your remix isn't doing anything different, why are you doing it at all?
Exactly. And especially for fighting games, again, they're fast games, they are fast-paced, you have to set up something that is fast-paced, and that can lead to something very interesting, something I didn't put up in our preliminary track order, but that I kind of regret now, and will probably add after the episode is done, is also the remixes for the Persona 5 soundtrack they made in Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Oh, right!
Yeah. In particular, Beneath the Mask is not a fighting game song. They made it a fighting game song.
What? Why? How? Never mind. I'm not sure I want to know. What? Okay, this I've got to hear, because, that is not a song that you can turn in, at least. Okay, so for those of you listening to the audio-only version and not watching the stream, I just listened through the remix of Beneath the Mask, and this song, man...
The Smash Bros. Ultimate remix.
Yeah, the Smash Bros. Ultimate remix. First, that bass line is killer. Second, there's a string section there that's right out of Do the Hustle. Early disco, early funk, and I'm just this hits hard. The remix was done by Ace, apparently. Do I have that right?
Yep.
Ace is part of Ace Plus. Shocking, I know. Which is largely responsible for the two Xenoblade Chronicles soundtracks. Or sorry, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, not Xenoblade Chronicles X. That was a different composition team. I want to clarify that because there's more than two Xenoblade Chronicles games right now.
Yes.
So the two mainline ones.
Chronicles X was Hiroyuki Sawano.
Yeah.
And it shows. You'd hate it.
Oh, I already do. What little I've heard of this, I'm get this out of my face.
Yeah. And I love it. Of course.
Of course. Again, finally, we're getting some different opinions here. This one is not going to be different. This song is a jam, this Beneath the Mask remix. This is unreal. How do you take...
We're talking about remakes that do a lot of work, and this one does.
That one does. Yeah, that's kind of a miracle. It doesn't seem derivative at all, which is amazing.
Yeah. You said Beneath the Mask was the remix of this track, I'd believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. It could honestly go either way. Here's the chill version that we made off of this like ramped up song. It's hard for me to talk about original flavor Beneath the Mask after hearing that remix.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting and important if only to contrast it.
Yeah.
Because it is very much an iconic track as well.
It is.
Probably one of the most replayed and reinterpreted tracks I've seen online these days.
Understandable. For those of you who don't know what song that is, that's the just chill walking around town music that you get during the life simulator portions of Persona. Closest that game will have really to an overworld track, though that's stretching the definition of overworld to an almost destructive degree. Like I don't think you could reasonably call it that, but that's the vibe you get.
Yeah, and it's a very good track to reflect the fact that after all of that high-flying action and everything else you did in the palaces, you now get some R&R.
Yeah, and it works as a contrast. It really does. I'm going to be honest, I've tuned that song out more often than I care to admit. Not sure I could ever tune out that remix. That remix is just unreal. I'm still kind of stuck on it, bouncing around my head like, wait, how did you do that? But, yeah,
it's just letting you cool off. I mean, I hear that immediately I'm transported back to Café Leblanc.
Yeah. God, I wish there was an actual like Café Leblanc style place. I would love curry and coffee as a specialty. That just sounds perfect to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Musically, Beneath the Mask is, as you said, a very iconic song. Obviously so.
Yes.
It's hard for me to compare it to really any song in either Persona or Shin Megami Tensei because it is so different from other Around Town or other overworld musics.
Yeah, and that makes sense because it couldn't exist outside of what Persona 5 is trying to be and is trying to show.
Yeah.
Which is the heists and the infiltration, the sneaking around because you're phantom thieves, and all of the aesthetic that goes around, including musical aesthetic.
Yes, and that's been pretty common. Now, before we got off track, because Beneath the Mask remix happened, we were in the process of talking about the main battle theme to Persona 4.
Yes.
The main battle theme to Persona 5, I can't give a crap about. I can't. I tried.
Oh, really?
I really did. During the Royal version, there were costumes you could put on that would actually change the battle music. I spent basically...
that was already the case in the original.
There was?
And it's why I didn't put the Persona 3 or Persona 4 costumes. Oh. Because I wanted to listen to Last Surprise.
Which is funny because I went straight to the Persona 2 costume and listened to that awesome battle theme. And kind of played through my entire Royal... I mean, I mixed around on occasion, but for the most part, I played Royal in Persona 2 Land. And I was very happy to do that because that song is a great battle theme. Persona 5 just was like, okay, this is here. It exists. It's not offensive, but I really can't get up any enthusiasm for that song.
Before I talk about the music specifically, I'd like to finish a point which should tie into the music specifically.
Yes.
Which is to contrast it with something like Persona 4. Because Persona 4's OST, if you hear it in isolation, you don't know really that you're going for a detective movie feel.
Yeah, that's not really a murder mystery sort of soundtrack, to be perfectly honest with you.
Meanwhile, Persona 5, you know you're getting to steal some things.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe they slightly overcompensate and overdo it at times, I'll admit. But it's very present. It just pops out kind of like how each of those three latest Persona games have their theme color and put it everywhere possible.
Yes.
The theme is about as present as that in the music. And that includes Last Surprise.
Yeah.
Which has, which has also this strong bass, this very strong opening. I don't know how deliberate it is, but I found that during the fights where I knew the enemies and could easily dispatch them, technically the song hit its climax just as I unleashed the all-out attack, which is a very strong point as well.
I would be surprised if that wasn't intentional. I would be surprised if the battle theme was... I would be surprised if the battle timing wasn't timed for that exact purpose.
Yeah, and it just works, and even if you don't hear the climax right at this moment, it still kind of works to me because it then continues. It's not just a high point and then it goes down. It lasts for a long while. And yeah, even the lyrics, it starts barely listenable because it just more focused on the musicality, but then the lyrics take over, and it's basically about how much the good guys are better than the bad guys at this thing, and how they got them completely fooled and played. Which is a bit cocky, a bit arrogant, but it kind of fits.
But when you actually play the game, like they actually kind of do, so it's hard to call it cocky or arrogant when they're living up to that hype.
Yeah, and it kind of, even so, it makes sense they act like that, if only because they've earned it by having that attitude spectacularly backfire every now and then. Which is just kind of how they're going for. High risk, high reward, playing high and getting burned, that sort of thing.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Exciting. Exactly. Very much looking forward to. And I think that's pretty much all for Last Surprise. The whole dynamic, it just makes you want to go ahead and keep seeing how far you can push your luck.
Yeah. Well, that's good for a battle theme. In the case of the boss theme you decided to post there, you picked a humdinger. You picked, what was that, Rains in the Desert or something like that?
Rivers in the Desert.
Sure. Wait, which one?
Rivers in the Desert.
Rivers in the Desert, yeah, something like that. I hate this song. I flat out despise this one.
Honestly, out of most of the song, it's probably, even if the lyrics and the vocals tone in general is still very much in the whole Persona 5 atmosphere.
It's in the atmosphere. I just think compositionally it's boring as hell. Like it's 5 notes. The melody goes nowhere.
As I was saying, in spite of the fact that it's still inside of that frame, it's probably one of the most anime songs in the game.
Maybe that's why I hate it so much. Like I already have a thing about English language lyrics and video game music. Like that just bothers me, and that's all over the Persona series. So, like, if I'm okay with a song that has English language lyrics in it, then that's a pretty good sign of its quality. In this case, though, it just gets everything wrong. It just makes me angry. Like, this song makes me want to clear the boss fight as quickly as possible to make the song go away.
And given that on the first encounter, that boss in question is literally unbeatable.
Yeah, it doesn't help either, does it?
That's certainly a problem, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't get this one. This one, there's a song that it reminded me of that I'm just like, why is this music playing? It's the melody line goes nowhere. The drums are overmixed and overpowers everything. Just that one thunk, thunk, thunk of the kick drum.
I think that's the strongest point of the track. It's just there's this incredible force in front of you, and of course you go da-na, da-da-na. And yeah, that set up that. Sorry.
No problem.
Gonna drink a little.
By all means, I think I will do the same.
Yeah, it just sets up that a position that's overwhelming. That's not just an opponent, that's not just a person. It's a force of nature of sorts, and it's unmovable. Even though you came there just to move it in your pocket, symbolically, of course.
You see, that's the symbolism you get. To me, I get the symbolism of the professor from The Witcher 1, where one of the responses to him is literally telling him to shut the F up and stop monologuing at me. I don't care. We're going to fight now. Let's finish this. Please.
Except you don't really finish this at this point. I mean, the first time you hear the song anyway, but then you get it in the reprise. Actually, now that I think of it, was there already lyrics on the first encounter, or do they only come on the second part? When you actually beat it?
I don't remember specifically. I know there's an instrumental version, which I actually don't like any better than the regular one, because the lyrics aren't really the problem here. They don't help, but they're like not something that I have a specific problem with other than my general pet peeve. Whereas the actual rest of the composition is just insufferable. So I don't actually remember because I try to tune this song out. I'm sorry.
Okay, so assuming that the lyrics only come for the second part, it just, to me, show that it's essentially building a conclusion to the soundtrack. Because there's the parts, the drums, and every heavy beat that brings the end, but then it still returns to the main sonorities of the game. And yeah, we talked about the build-up to a showdown before, and that's the showdown after the showdown, essentially.
I'm trying really hard to come up with anything resembling a response to that, but all that's going to do is me devolving into I hate it some more, and I don't think we need to hear any more of that. I think I made my point pretty clear. So, I don't remember the final boss music from either Persona 5 Normal or Persona 5 Royale, so I'm not, but I mean, being unmemorable to me is certainly better than
honestly,
I don't know.
To be perfectly honest, I didn't even go after and actually end the final boss, because the end kind of dragged on, the end section, that is. Because, yeah, like, the build-up to Shido was pretty climactic, but I was like, okay, I understand fully that that's not the end.
Yeah,
and then you go to the
world
depths
isn't ending, neither is the game.
Yeah, and then you go to the end of Mementos to get to the real opponent, and then at this point I'm like, okay, I'm good. This is good. This is a good place to end. Then they continue for another dungeon and a half. And that was the dungeon and a half too much to me.
Huh. Dungeon and a half? Wait a minute.
Because, there's the dungeon at the end of Mementos, and then there's the lead up all the way to the final boss.
Right, yeah. I didn't mind that so much. Again, I'm used to it. This is borderline the same thing that Persona 4 did. So.
No, of course.
Like, again, that was easily my biggest complaint about Persona 5, is that it just felt like a reaction to Persona 4 and perceived mistakes with that game than it did trying to be its own entity. So it was very easy to draw these comparisons just based on the flow of everything.
It does opposes it on a lot of points. Like, one, you're detective, the other, you're criminals. One has this very lightly present theme, the other, it's everywhere.
Yeah. Which, I mean, again, I just kind of wish Persona 5 tried harder to be its own entity instead of Persona 4, but done right this time. And that assumption is that Persona 4 was wrong inherently.
And it's not.
There were elements of it where I totally agree they didn't handle things as good as they could have in Persona 4, and the things they were addressing in Persona 5 were things they got wrong in Persona 4, but they took it way too far and basically made all of Persona 5 just Persona 4 again from a different perspective. I'm just like, no.
From an opposite perspective, even.
Yeah.
Like, you in the countryside on one and in the middle of Tokyo in the other.
Like, there's an important message there in don't let society rule you. Don't just do what's expected of you. Be your own person. That's actually a humongous message that Japan especially needs to hear. But
yes,
I just wish Persona 5 tried harder to find its own identity instead of relying so hard on the same story structure, the same, largely the same characters as Persona 4. Like, it's very easy to draw comparisons between the characters in many ways. It didn't try hard enough to be its own entity, which was my biggest complaint about it. That for all its style, its substance was a retread. Does that make Persona 5 a bad game? No. When you rip off something excellent, it still comes out to being pretty good, but it still felt like, So the final dungeon thing that you're talking about, like, I did that in Persona 4 already, so of course Persona 5 is going to do it as well, and it was fine. I didn't have a problem with that. I thought the final bits were fine. It did play, like, the one, like, really cool, quote-unquote dungeon, quote-unquote thief theme, and that is Life Will Change, which is, that's one of the few songs with lyrics that I'm just like, yes, please, give me this. I like this song a lot.
That's the song with lyrics that I like the least.
Wow! How are we
incredible.
doing this?
Yeah, and like, I was just going to say, of course it makes sense that the final part didn't drag on too much for you because it dragged too much for me.
Yep.
We're not trying, by the way.
We aren't. We really aren't.
It's just how we are, apparently.
This song is very polarizing. I mean, this.
Yes.
I mean, it is. I don't know if it is. I don't know. I love this song, and you're the first person I've heard of that's actually kind of not like this song. To be honest with you.
I don't hate it or anything. It's just that among the ones with the lyrics, this one just was a bit flat to me early on, and just, you know, it doesn't picks up in a way that carries me along, so to speak.
Fair enough.
It just doesn't reach enough of a climax, which kind of makes sense for an introduction, but it just doesn't do it for me.
God, I actually really like this one. I think it's got a really great energy to it. I think it's very dynamic. God, we just keep doing this.
Incredible.
It really is. We are not planning this, by the way. I was not expecting this episode to be this at odds.
I kind of expected it, but maybe not to this point. And honestly, I'm more entertained by that fact than anything else.
Oh, me too. No, this is just fun. This is funny to me. Yeah. I'm right there with you.
If there's only one single message you should derive from this episode, is that it's okay to disagree between reasonable adults.
Yeah, it really is. And that's something that I think people need to be more okay with in general, that not everyone should go the same way and do the same thing and like the same stuff. Oh, hey, it's like Persona 5's moral all over again.
Or like the same stuff in the exact same way.
Yeah.
Be your own person. Wait, where have I heard this theme before?
It's familiar, isn't it? God.
Yeah. So, let's move on. while we were talking about the final place, let's talk about the ninth palace that I didn't heard before.
Okay. This song is about the new final bad guy. Without spoiling too much, it was the most interesting take on Shin Megami Tensei Chaos Route that I've ever seen in a video game. In a Shin Megami Tensei game.
Because, and like, that game as a whole is just chaos all the way down.
It is. But this has actually taken chaos to a extreme, but a benevolent one, which is weird for chaos.
Yeah.
You don't usually get that. I don't want to say any more about it.
And I appreciate that a lot.
I do too. It is very different.
Chaos is not evil. We agreed on something.
We did. Amazing.
Whoa.
You haven't played Royal yet. I'm not sure you're going to agree when you get there, but at least in concept, yes, it's very cool. Very different.
In concept.
It actually took me a while to realize this was chaos in action, but it actually really was. And I'm like, oh, this is all about what SMT Chaos is all about, just without the whole violence and demons and thing.
Yeah. I mean, there are demons, but...
oh, yeah, of course. But
cool ones.
Not like you're used to in Shin Megami Tensei Chaos. Usually Shin Megami Tensei Chaos is just hard survival of the fittest. There's monsters everywhere, do or die.
Exactly.
And in this one, no, it's largely benevolent and life goes on and continues. Unfortunately, the final dungeon is just sort of there and boring, and it's got a cool piano line and almost nothing else to it. I don't care for the song that much. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. The dungeon itself was really cool and actually like a real final dungeon that took on a lot of the elements of prior dungeons and finally let you do things. I really played up one of Royal's newest features, which is the grappling hook. Made that usable and fun. A lot more than the other dungeons did, which were largely just the original dungeons with some stuff added on. This one actually has like new grapple stuff that you actually need to traverse. Makes it very cool. The new characters, both of whom you can finally get on your dungeon on a permanent basis here. Both were excellent, and I appreciated very much.
Ooh, nice.
It comes together in a great way, and the music is just there. It's there. Gentle Madman, it's called, which is an accurate phrasing. And this song is just, it's very there. It exists. It is a song that exists in the world. That is much as I can give you with this one. I spent a long time.
From what I've heard, again, surprisingly, I'm inclined to agree with a caveat.
Okay.
And it's that the theming of this song reminds me a lot, not of Persona 5, but of Persona 3, 4, and 5 as a whole. It seems more themed and has more of a sound that makes me think of that trio as a whole. In particular, the emotional moments, like the post-battle version of Reach Out to the Truth.
Okay.
Kind of got this sort of vibe, except as a dungeon. And if you don't have the emotional moment that follows you, I can see why this would fall flat and just be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what dungeon song isn't just there for me? That would be Price.
That was the bank, right?
Yes, that was the bank heist.
Yeah, I thought so. That was, once again, one of my least favorite songs on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
God, that melody line is annoying.
It is. It annoyed me at first as well. But, like, for a long while, I probably preferred the palace that followed, which I imagine grates you because of its repetitiveness and other stuff.
That was which one? The space station was next?
Yeah. Yes.
Wait, no, I think the pyramid after that, wasn't it? Wasn't the pyramid after that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So, yes, the space station.
Okay.
I meant the space station. I
didn't mind the space station music itself so much. I actually thought it was fine. I think about as much about it as I do the Gentle Madman. It's there. It exists. I don't really have much of a strong opinion on that whatsoever. Yeah. The thing that gets me about the space station is whenever the bad guy speaks, he's got like a vocalization on there that like the mixer needs to be fired. Like that literally hurt me. That was
a long while,
objectively and literally painful.
Yeah. For a long while, that music, I think it's called Sweatshop, yes.
I think
which is a great name.
It makes sense.
That music was my favorite dungeon theme for a while. The dungeon was and still is my least favorite.
I don't know. I thought the dungeon itself was fine. Again, I don't really have a strong opinion about it one way or the other.
I just thought that the gimmick of the employees and the upper, middle, lower management stuff kind of overstayed its welcome.
You see, I don't really. I mean, that's there, but I'm more like, oh, you get to jump through space. That's cool, and I like the gate switching puzzle. I like the conveyor belt.
Get to jump through space.
Yeah, I like the conveyor belt puzzle quite a bit. A conveyor belt? Yeah, the cranes.
Oh, yeah. Also, thematically, I mean, I can see castle heists and kidnappings and stuff. I can see museum heists. I can see bank heists, of course. Casinos make perfect sense. Boat, sure. I mean, it kind of has to be there. Space heist, though. What kind of a theme is that?
One that tried and failed in a bad Star Wars movie? I've never actually seen said bad Star Wars movie, but I've heard enough about it to know I'm not going to enjoy it. It is something that actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back and go back much farther than Solo, which was not good, and go to something that actually had a space heist that was awesome, and that was Farscape. Farscape had a few space heists. That show was great. Those episodes were pretty great.
Interesting.
So I'm actually going to hit the I don't have a problem with this concept button. It has to be done right, obviously, but
my heist reference is probably somewhere around Leverage, which is more grounded.
It is more grounded. That's a show I really need to finish.
I like it a lot.
I understand.
A lot. Back to Price.
Yeah. I hate it.
So
I hate it. This song is bad.
It grated me at first, but probably around the time I made a pause, it just stayed rent-free inside of my head for days and days. And it may be something of a Stockholm syndrome at this point.
Oh, boy.
But it's just the instrument, the main instrument, which is pretty unusual, brings this kind of Middle Eastern theme to temper the more general bass line of the song.
But the Middle Eastern theme doesn't fit. It's a modern bank. Save that for the pyramid.
I have no counter to that. That's entirely fair. This part doesn't fit, but I like it.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with you. I disagree vehemently.
Yeah, no. I understand. I fully understand again why people would be very iffy about this one. But it just sets up a dynamic, something about the pace of it, something about how you're just hurrying along and crawling through the behind and the entrails of that bank. It's hard to articulate, but there's a catchiness in this song that I don't even get from Whims of Fate, which is the Casino Dungeon one. So, how about we go to another place we're probably going to disagree a lot?
Let's do it.
Which is Mementos. Which is kind of the counterpoint to Price to me. Where Price is very much not really a fitting track, but one that is catchy and that sets up a strong dynamic, go get it kind of theme. Mementos is very chill, which fits an optional dungeon. At least you're led to believe that it's this optional progression at first, with a very urban sense overall. Just this, I see this, I hear this, I'm immediately in the crawling subways, which are just such a great representation of the collective unconscious in an urban environment.
So, I grew up in New York City, and I took the subway a lot. And yes, I can say definitively that yes, the song that plays in Mementos, at least in the original version, definitely sounds like how a subway feels.
Yeah, and I kind of like it. It has a very much more subdued kind of cloak and dagger feel to it.
You see, I'm required by law to compare this to every other Persona game because Persona 5 just made it very clear that's what it was. It was every other Persona game.
Yes.
And I'm like, I know this dungeon isn't optional. I know I have to explore it. I've played Persona 3 and 4 enough to know that, yeah, the multi-level random dungeon, that is the dungeon. Get to it. So I did, and I found myself dealing with this song, which I never really vibed with, for 100 and something floors of it, and the best decision Persona 5 Royal ever made was actually give some of these different layers different songs and upgraded music, and actually gave a sense of progression, and a sense of adventure, and a sense of thematic. And
I can see how that would enhance it tremendously, even if I like the Mementos theme.
Correct. I did not like regular Mementos theme, but having alternate themes there, that especially that were location based, like giving the sense of progression, really made that area a lot more worthwhile to me. And I felt a lot better of it as a result in Royal, that one little change. Well,
I can 100% see that.
Yeah. As a whole, I didn't particularly like Mementos as a song, and the fact that it kept playing for in-game months on end was just mind-destroying.
I mean, the way it's kind of mind-destroying, as you said, kind of on a sort of meta level more than thematic level makes sense to me, because it's the song to grind to, essentially. And I kind of appreciate the echo between the grinding motions and actions you take in Mementos with the duller, more regular and more low-key song that's in it.
Space was saying, I recall significant anger at the original Mementos theme, not Berserk level rage, but you were not pleased. No, I was not. I especially coming off of Tartarus, which had, it was building on a theme, but it was still like a growing theme. So for the however hundreds of levels of that one, since that was the only real dungeon in Persona 3, like that one had some dynamics to it. Persona 4 had its own.
I'm thinking about something to compare it to, and it's also a dungeon theme. As some of the sonorities might suggest, it has a traditional Japanese theme to it, and judging by your face, I suppose I'm right in assuming that your emotions regarding this one are similar to the ones regarding Mementos.
No, Mementos I just flat out dislike. This one baffles me. I'm just confused by this one.
That bad, huh?
This one's all over the map. This is a lot more dynamic than Mementos. Mementos just droned on and on. This one's got some texture.
Yeah, it's more keeping you at a slow pace instead of just letting you be at a slow pace.
It's vibe. It's a weird song, but there's room for that. It's just...
Yeah.
Some of these mixing choices are real funny. Oh, there's that pad again, that buzzsaw, that frickin' chain smoker's fart pad.
Also, shoutouts to the fact that in one side game, specifically about singers and idols in general, the main battle theme didn't have lyrics.
Man, Tokyo Mirage Sessions just didn't work as a game, did it?
It makes no sense, especially within the context of Fire Emblem SMT crossover.
Yeah.
But I like it in the same way I like FF10 too. It has the same shamelessness to it.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, there's room for that. There's absolutely a thing there. Yeah, no, I definitely prefer this song over Mementos. Mementos...
I see.
Yeah. Yeah, this song is a lot more interesting to me.
I mean, it goes in a lot of places.
It goes in a lot of places. This mixes like 18 different genres in one thing. God, watch your saw wave synths, guys. That can get annoying fast. You prospective composers out there, your saw waveforms. That's that buzzing pad that sounds like a thing. Like, watch out for that one. Anyway, no, I get the comparisons to the song you were comparing it to, the Tokyo Mirage Sessions one.
Yep.
But the Tokyo Mirage Sessions
which is
one
on the 4th dungeon,
is dynamic. That it goes to different places. It's not like essentially the same 8 bars repeated over and over ad infinitum, which was one of my big problems with Mementos.
Yeah, I think my sentiments on the comparison between the two is that they both keep a low pace.
Yeah.
But Mementos lets you stay at that pace while Illusory Daitou TV forces you and blocks you in this space. But this means that it does have more of a personality, while Mementos doesn't, because it's the grey area.
Yeah, I don't know. Mementos, like, again, the fact that the other versions added the dynamic changes, added the texture to it, that Royale really kind of made Mementos a lot more tolerable to me as a result of that music and not being the same 8 bars over and over again, and having the new characters along on occasion to add their little quips to things was also very fun and helpful.
The one thing I wish Mementos has was more saxophone.
I'm not sure that would have helped the original song. Gotta be honest. I don't know how that gets... I don't see that helping. I'm like, it would just add a saxophone to an already really dreary song, and I'd just be like, why is this here?
Well, I can't see that synergizing, just in a kind of CD bar at 2 a.m. kind of way. Then again, we're not in a CD bar at 2 a.m., we're in the subway.
I mean, last time I was in New York, one of the things I saw in the subway was a Chabad band. Chabad is a sect of Judaism, and they were just playing at Washington Square Station, and they were a band that were playing music there. So the subway can get kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Buskers near Juilliard are a real thing.
That's absolutely a point that doesn't show at all.
Yeah.
But maybe it's less present in the Tokyo subway, because Japanese mentalities are pretty different.
They really are. And yeah, if anything, the Phantom Thieves themselves would be the equivalent of the buskers, because they're the weirdos.
Yes, absolutely.
All the more reason that I feel like the music probably should have reflected their weirdness more than it did Mementos' particularly stale energy. And I see.
So Mementos that would suit you would be something that starts with the dull bass, but then has something to break it up, right?
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's again the other Mementos musics. Once I keep coming back to this point, but once Royale actually started mixing it up a bit, it got way more tolerable. So really, I'm just talking about the original.
Of course.
Mementos music at this point, and not any of its many variations, which are significantly better. Or I don't want to say better necessarily, because I'm not sure that's accurate, but significantly more acceptable and makes the area more interesting. So I keep harping on that point, but that point is really important.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it's an important point, and as I've said, I probably would like that change as well.
Yeah.
Even with like in Mementos, there's such a thing as having too much of a track that you like in a game. That was actually one of the things about Rhythm Thief, which was another game that had a heist feel to it, and it has a main theme that's pretty great. It's catchy, it's very intense, very rhythmical, which makes sense given that it is a rhythm game.
Right.
And that track by itself is great. The problem is that it is almost everything you hear. Like, it comes back way too often. And this game seems to have a problem overdoing things. This game was too French for me.
That's impressive, considering you are French.
Yes, I see a lot of French stuff every day. This was too much.
So, to borrow from John Oliver, it seems to be trying to win a competition called So You Think You Can France.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like, yes, Tour Eiffel, Arc de Triomphe. Yes, Musée, Louvre. I see.
Oh,
and I'm like, okay, we get it. And yeah, this is very much a case where even for me that like the drone in Mementos, this was just too much. And as Geister Fox in chat says, then it adds a baguette.
Sounds like the answer to that is yes, it does.
Yes. No, but just confirming, there's nothing to add but that truth. But it's interesting to see the kind of comparison and contrast between two similar themes, which are this kind of glamorized version of the Phantom Thief. And it's got a color to it, it's got a texture to it. Incidentally, Rhythm Thief also a very red game somehow. So I guess there's an image, and I believe it came out before Persona 5, so it's not a direct inspiration in this way.
Yeah.
It's just that some of the themes echo each other, which makes sense. I believe that I would understand these links better if I watched or read more Lupin the Third, because I believe that's a big inspiration for anything Phantom Thief related in Japanese culture.
That is my understanding as well. There's a new Lupin show. Lupin? I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it. I think it's Lupin. There's a new one of those on Netflix right now. I think it's Netflix.
Arsène Lupin.
Yeah, I think it's Netflix. It's either Netflix or Amazon. It's one of the big two. Yeah. And yeah, I probably should check that out.
That's probably one more part of the puzzle that neither of us really have.
That's fair. That is very fair. And with that, I think we have exhausted our Persona topics for today. Thank you for this wonderful journey throughout all of this weird, wild, wonderful, wacky game that
and the weird relationship we have to it, whether opposite in what we like about it, but equal in how much we like it in general.
pretty much. And for those of you who are going to play it right out of the gate, have fun with Strikers. I know I will.
Me too.
And we'll be back next time to steal your hearts again. Thank you for listening to Music Arcade. Have a good one, y'all.
Thank you, everyone.